Wiznitzer versus Andrew Jessup. Aryeh on a mulligan to 6 here for the first game. Rogue Refiner going to be an interesting one. Not a great 3-drop for the matchup.
Can't Kenra it, so that's nice.
Can't Kenra it. Soulscar Mage for Aryeh. It might be a slight upgrade. Tireless Tracker was generally not a good card in this matchup. I just think Rogue Refiner is going to be an upgrade to it because you always get the card. You can just jam it on turn 3.
Yep. Yeah, frequently it will just play better.
Long Tusk Hub for Andrew. He got 1 energy off of that Aether Hub. Remember, Aryeh, Sun-Scorched Desert puts Andrew to 19.
Powerful magic card.
That's doing just fine right now. Shock takes care of the Long Tusk Hub, and Bomat Courier swings. So a Prowess will deal 2, and Bomat Courier make it 3. Andrew drops to 16.
1 mana, 1 creature. Turn 1, 1 mana creature. Turn 2, 2 spells. This is where the red deck wants to be.
Yeah. And Rogue Refiner for Andrew Jessup. There's that blue splash. Just had the basic island. His colors will be online. Andrew's at a pretty healthy 16. The scary part about Rogue Refiner is when Aryeh's deck is playing 4 shocks. That's a trade that's all sorts of bad here.
Yeah, any kind of removal spell here for Wiznitzer would allow him to punch in for 3, get another card under the Bomat Courier.
Right.
Bomat Courier has one of the highest ceilings in the red deck. If you're able to get a couple cards under that and activate it, it's so powerful.
And here you do have the Shock, a swing in for 3 more, Andrew to 13. Aryeh didn't have another land, so despite the fact that Shock cost 1, it still took his whole turn. And I think you saw right there, Aryeh was debating whether he wanted to cast Shock versus an Abrade in his hand, because they were functionally the same cost. Still went for Shock, though.
Yeah, sometimes you do run into some problematic artifact. For example, some of these Sultai decks could just be playing Ether Sphere Harvester. So you'd want to sandbag the Abrade for that reason. Or if you run into a Winding Constrictor, dealing 3 damage to that matters.
Well, he'll Abrade the second Rogue Refiner. Speaking of missing land drops, Andrew did. He'll drop down to 10. Aryeh now another card under the Courier. He still doesn't have the land. And I kind of feel bad for Andrew. He's had this Blossoming Defense in his hand for the last few turns, and he draws another Blossoming Defense. It's good, right?
This is not the spot for that one.
Yeah.
I believe a Rishkar in the holdings.
Yeah, Rishkar, 2 Blossoming Defense, Hostage Taker, Glint Sleeve Siphoner. These are all options for Andrew. That's kind of what I said, where Andrew said is playing a lot of the cards that are not good in this matchup. Like this hand of 2 Blossoming Defense, 1 Glint Sleeve Siphoner. It's really on the wrong side to be playing against red to have those.
Yeah, you got to figure reasonable amount of sideboarding happening here after this game.
Yeah.
In particular, just in games where you don't draw that many lands, drawing this many Blossoming Defenses is really bad.
Andrew uses Aether Hub to cast Glint Sleeve Siphoner. I'm interested he would use the hub to cast it as opposed to the marsh.
Yeah, that's some fancy plays. He's trying to signal to Aryeh, saying, I'm going to do something with this blooming marsh.
Well, why wouldn't you just leave up the hub?
I mean, yeah, he's clearly, it's psychological.
Okay,
yeah. It's suboptimal in terms of resource usage.
But so it's intentionally, because it's the same land except this one can't make blue, and he's using the energy. Yeah. So what's the message it sends?
He's just signaling to his opponent, I'm casting something. I'm trying to make you chicken out of some play.
Okay.
Are you gonna? Is this gonna impact your play? He's so far behind. Just giving your opponent an extra thing to think about is the line here.
Earthshaker Kenra from Aryeh, and I like this play a lot. It calls the Blossoming Defense in a way that gets Andrew no value. Right? Okay, he casts Kenra. Andrew gives this guy hexproof, and Aryeh just says no attacks. Here go.
Yep. I'll just hang back.
Yeah. Sure, Andrew gets another card off the Siphoner
if he wants.
Yeah, but he had to spend a card to do it. It's not. It's not really upside.
And Andrew not going to pay the life there.
Here's Rishkar. Counters on both. That does mean he has that second Blossoming Defense up. Remember that Glint Sleeve Siphoner can tap for green. And there's a land for Aryeh. See what he wants to, what this allows him to play. He has still a few cards left, and also 3 under that Bomat Courier. Yeah, 3 in hand, 3 under the Courier.
Getting real close to activating Courier for 3 or more cards.
Do you have that on your sheet?
I sure do.
Ooh, okay. A Braid on Rishkar. Will Andrew Blossoming Defense? He will.
Yeah, can't just let that one slip through.
Right. So it's a 5/5 now as well. That might put an end to some of Aryeh's attacks. Aryeh does have a Hazaret and a Kari Zev, it looks like, in his hand.
So those will be hanging out in the hand for a second anyway.
Yeah.
There's an argument for just turning your creature sideways and getting in some chip shot here. In particular, because you get to draw so many cards with the Bomat Courier and your hand's very inefficient as well. I'm really into tidings.
Yeah, so it's 4th card under it. And I guess, Andrew, it's not really throwing away a card because you're putting another card under the Courier. So the 5/5 Rishkar is going to block. It looks like the Kenra. And because, yeah, and you can't really block Soulscar Mage either. He'd lose his mana if he did. So he takes, looks like 3, 2 off the Soulscar Mage and 1 off the Bomat Courier.
And it's also true that there's a chance that Soulscar Mage only attacks for 1 on turns going forward.
I wouldn't.
1 o'clock Legacy Challenge players, your pairings have been posted.
Let's see.
Again, 1 o'clock Legacy Challenge players, your pairings.
So Jessup draws a swamp. 4 mana here. He does have Hostage Taker. He's going to go for that. See what he steals.
Wouldn't make a ton of sense to go after the Bomat Courier unless you think that Aryeh does not want to sacrifice it.
Right. He'll take Soulscar Mage. That works. Well, it's hard now for Aryeh now that he knows about the Hostage Taker. I don't know if he can even cast Hazaret. Andrew's going to immediately cast Soulscar Mage. And attacks with Glint-Sleeve Siphoner. He's got 2 blockers and is starting to deal damage. Yeah, Aryeh can pop the Bomat Courier, but he's got to deal 7 damage, and it's unclear how he's going to do it.
He's already gone through a couple shocks, so he wants to find more of these direct damage spells.
Yeah. Draw here. It was not a land.
And Jessup has a 2-turn clock going here.
Yeah. So it's going to be Kari Zev from Aryeh. Maybe an attack and a sack of the Bomat Courier.
Yep.
Get 5 new cards. Hope you can find 7 points of burn in there.
With this many creatures on the battlefield for Jessup, you won't be able to connect with the Bomat Courier. You just got to convert that into cards. The Hazaret in hand realistically isn't going to do anything. Even if you could cast it this turn, you'd get 1 activation maybe.
Right. What I'm interested in is whether or not Aryeh plays the Kari Zev before sacking, and I think the answer is going to be no. So 5th card under Bomat Courier. Soulscar Mage is going to block it. Aryeh's reading now.
Just wants to get Lightning Strike and cast it. You know,
Sure.
If next turn his hand is Lightning Strike, Shock, he may not be able to cast all of those cards.
You're right. So he has to have enough mana to do it. So a block before damage. Aryeh going to get 5 new cards. Hazaret and Kari Zev were both gone. So here, now he'll get to look at them. He'd love to find maybe even a Sun-Scorched Desert. That could help out. Ramanap Ruins. There are a lot of options here. It's a mountain. Would have liked to have found some burn. Something like Sun-Scorched Desert and Lightning Strike that turn would have been very nice.
I believe he did find a Lightning Strike.
Okay. But you said he's got 2... Andrew's got a 2-turn clock, even with Aryeh at 17.
He has 9 power on the battlefield here with no prowess trigger.
Yeah, the only way Aryeh can slow that down is with a removal spell. Andrew would be pretty happy to see removal spells pointed at his creatures.
And Andrew wisely has declined to draw any cards off the Glint-Sleeve Siphoner. Had he done that, he'd be at 6. That's just 2 Lightning Strikes.
Yeah, that's some really good foresight on Andrew's side. Very early on in the game, he declined a draw trigger. Swings. Full 9. Contemplating it. He wants to make sure he's got a 2-turn clock, so he can't leave too much blocking back. He wants to have a blocker. I would think he'd really hate to lose this game to an on-crop crasher.
Right. Though one creature back wouldn't do anything about that. If he could leave back 2 creatures. But unless he has a bunch of creatures in his hand, that's just too many resources.
Yeah.
If you can make a 2-turn clock versus a 3-turn clock, that's a lot of time to give a burn deck.
I think he has another Blossoming Defense, so creature plus Blossoming Defense should keep a non-crop crasher in check.
Sure.
Looks like Andrew's going to say go. Lightning Strike perhaps from Aryeh.
Unclear if combat damage has resolved.
Okay.
Though
Well, yeah,
I
we'll
gotta
check.
figure that Wisnitzer's only winning this game by going upstairs. If a Lightning Strike targets a creature, this game very well might just be over in Jessup's favor.
Lightning Strike, there we go. Lightning Strike on Glint Sleeve Siphoner. And Andrew's going to Blossoming Defense it. That's huge. I think this is what Aryeh is deciding he doesn't have the damage to burn out. But that's a big swing.
And if he didn't
So now it's
have
for
it
11, yeah. Another Glint Sleeve Siphoner.
for that Blossoming Defense, he certainly doesn't have it after.
Right.
Yeah, if you think that the Lightning Strike is going to resolve, you make it so you have another turn to draw, but you're drawing to the card you just threw out of your hand. Yeah, the only way you're winning that game is by going upstairs.
Well, yeah, he could go upstairs, but if he doesn't have a 4-point burn spell, so he'd have to be drawing to. If he doesn't have a like his best burn spells there are what? Crasher. Really, Sunscorched Desert.
Realistically, I suppose if you think you can get it. Well, no, if you expend the card that you already need to draw, and you need 3 of that card, if you use one of them and only get 2 draw steps out of it, you get 1 additional draw step up to 2, you're still not getting it.
Yeah, it might be in situations where if he only has the one strike and no more points to burn it, I don't know that he has a live draw, so point it wherever. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just kind of a game that he can't win anyway.
Right. So game 1 goes over to Andrew Jessup, and I'm pretty impressed by that. He drew a lot of cards that are historically not good in the Ramanap matchup. Glint Sleeve Siphoner, Blossoming Defense, these aren't great cards. Andrew winning it anyway, though. That's great. And his sideboard has some really good options.
As we go over there, 4 copies of Duress, 4 Deathgorge Scavenger, 2 Vraska's Contempt, 2 Negate, a Scarab God, a Spell Pierce, and a Vraska Relic Seeker. So the big ones here, Deathgorge Scavenger, really
Huge.
nice.
Yeah, so this is the 3/2 for 3. When it attacks, you may exile a card in a graveyard. And the part we care about here is if you exile a creature card, he gains 2 life.
Vraska's Contempt significant not only because it exiles Vraska, but also because it just gains, or Hazaret rather, and also because it just gains 2 life upon resolution.
Yeah.
Negate pretty strong. You don't want all of your Duresses in Negate just because your opponent only has so many burn spells. Negate because it eats their mana I think is more significant.
Sure. On Aryeh's side, 4 Chandra's Defeat, 4 Chandras, 4 Glorybringers, 2 PNLR, and a Vansa's Blasting Cannon. I'm pretty into these 4 Glorybringers for the matchup.
Yeah, Glorybringer, pretty nice in any of these kind of creature mirrors, and in particular, it's his best out to Hostage Taker, assuming that the spell is still under the Taker.
Yeah, you can just kill that and then get the creature back. That would be nice. Anything else you like here? Vansa's Blasting Cannons?
That one's fine. Probably more likely to reach for the Chandras first in this matchup, in particular on the play, just to deal with some of these meaty creatures on Jessup's side of the battlefield.
Yeah, if your opponent's playing 3 mana face up for a creature, then killing it with a 4 mana Planeswalker is a pretty good exchange.
Yep.
Well, if he could play in the sideboard, I know there's one card Andrew would play. That would be a Vampire Night Fox. That is our creature collection. You can get this one. It's going to be our October promo at game night. You can also get it on sleeves, playmats, and in player bundles. Those are going on sale now. So you can go ahead and pick up this little guy over at starcitygames.com/creature collection.
You might not believe it if you look at modern decks these days, but
this card used to see play in modern.
It's, not in modern. I played 4 copies of this in extended.
Yeah, I guess I said extended. I said modern, I meant extended,
well,
yeah.
There were cards that were legal and extended at that time that are very much banned in modern.
Right.
So I won a PTQ with a deck that was playing 4 Ponder, 4 Preordain,
nice,
3 Jace the Mind Sculptor.
This is a good deck.
And 4 Vampire Nighthawk.
Yeah, those cards are all roughly the same.
Yeah, comparable power levels there.
I played in Mono Black at one point. It was Dark Confidant, Chrome Mox, and Vampire Nighthawk.
You see, Dark Confidant costs life.
Right.
And Vampire Nighthawk gains life.
Yeah.
It's a combo.
I had Umazawa's Jite, too. That was nice.
My deck also featured main deck Volcanic Fallout, which was another combo with Vampire Nighthawk.
It doesn't kill it.
Yeah.
And you gain the 2 life,
yeah.
because it hits players and you gain life back.
All upside.
Gotta beat fairies somehow. That's always funny to look at those lists, right? You're like, Chrome Mox GT, and like, oh, wow, that sounds great. What creature you put on? Vampire Nighthawk? Like,
Suit
wait,
it up.
what? Like, yeah. It's really, what is it? When you go to older cards, the spells are really good and the creatures are really bad. So old deck lists are this combination of just fantastic non-creature spells and really mopey creatures.
Yep. There was a blue-white control deck that was obviously playing Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah.
And then you just equipped your equipment to Mutavault because none of the creatures were worth playing.
Right. Here you go back, people are like, man, that Psychotog was like the best creature in Magic. Like, yeah. That's... It's come a long way since then.
Yep. Well, it was the best because you could actually register it in your deck and
In your
continue to
blue-black
win
control
games.
deck, yeah. You're like, how few creatures can I play? And I'm like, well, this Psychotog card is blue and black, and it can deal all 20 by itself. And it's really low mana, so you can still leave up your counterspells, and it doesn't die to terror. So there's a lot of good things.
How else are you going to win the game after you upheaval all of your opponent's permanents?
Turn 1 Aryeh, Bomat Courier, puts a card under it, puts Andrew to 19. Swamp and Pass for Jessup. And swings for 1 again. That's not a Sunscorched Desert. That's actually a Scavenger Grounds. 2 copies of Scavenger Grounds in Aryeh's deck today.
Same mana composition for Wiznitzer going into game 2. We'll see if he's able to cast more relevant spells, though.
Yeah. No turn 2 play, but he does have Lightning Strike at the ready for a possible 2-drop. These energy decks have a lot of reasonable 2s that you'd want to hit.
Yep. Optimal start is turn 2 Winding Constrictor, so having an answer for that is very relevant.
Yeah. Here is the hub for Jessup. No repeatable green mana source just yet. And he'll cast Walking Ballista. A fine answer here to Bomat Courier, and something that I like to play a lot from Andrew. It really makes a Lightning Strike look bad.
It's also nice that he doesn't have to use the energy on the Ether Hub here.
Yeah.
No reason to immediately go after the Bomat Courier. You can just hang out and block it. Wiznitzer has too many cards in hand to activate that for 2 or even 3 cards realistically.
Well, Aryeh will keep attacking. See how many cards Andrew is willing to let get under that Bomat Courier. And when he goes to attacks, he's going to say shoot it. Fair enough. Those exiled cards, they are gone. Interesting part about Bomat Courier, you just never get to know what they are.
And this is a very minor thing, but you see Jessup does that before the Bomat Courier trigger. The thing about the red deck is your best cards has rep by a lot, and if you exile a random card, on average the deck gets slightly better.
Yeah, well, there's also its respect, I think, for the card Built to Smash.
Sure, that could also potentially be in the deck. You haven't seen that one in a minute, but it's a new format. You don't know what your opponent's playing.
It's probably not there, but why give, you sure would hate if it was.
Yeah, and you wait till the last second, maybe for some reason a removal spell is aimed at the Walking Ballista.
And
not going to happen, but
Follow-up play from Aryeh is Pia Nalar. These are a 2-of copy in the sideboard.
Walking Ballista a lot worse against Pia than it is against Bomat Courier.
And yeah, it's just plays another Ballista and a tap land for Andrew, but it's just a 1/1 right now.
Round 2 have gone up. Please make your way to your seats. Again, 12 p.m. Two-Headed Giant Sealed Spectacular players. Your round 2
So we're back to Aryeh. Gets to untap with Pia Nalar. It's a nice situation for Aryeh that Pia is actually going to get to attack for damage here. In this matchup, that's pretty rare.
Yes.
It's got to feel good on his side to have all 3 points of damage connecting.
And with the mix of a Braid and Lightning Strike, just 8 3-damage spell you're pretty happy to play. You probably see a lot more of these spots than you did in the previous format where it had to be Incendiary Flow or a Braid.
Nice. On-crop Crasher from Aryeh, and I love this no exert. It's another win that he gets to cast this 3/2 without exerting here.
Depending what Jessup's able to do with this Ballista, a good chance he just goes for a chump block, shoots down the Thopter, tries to save on his life total.
Yeah, blocks Crasher, kills Thopter, takes 2. It's a gain of 4, and that's the play he's going to make. It's not a great use of Ballista, like not the use he was hoping for, but the right play given his situation.
Yep. Yeah, you can't just sit there taking damage hoping that your spot gets better.
Looks like Andrew does have Hostage Taker in his hand, but he did not have the mana for it. So instead he can only cast Rogue Refiner here. And that's a big miss for Jessup. He would have really liked, I think, to have Hostage taken the on-crop Crasher right there.
Also Pia, just because he gets it and makes a Thopter plus the 2/2.
Sure. Rogue Refiner does draw him the land, comes and enters the battlefield tapped. So Aryeh will shock down the 3/2. Swing for 5. It's such a beating that Aryeh can answer your 3-mana card with a 1-mana removal spell. You see Carrie Zev joins too.
Yeah, while it did replace itself, that's just not what this game is about.
No. It's why you saw it back when, about a month ago, when Brad Nelson and Corey Baumeister were winning multiple GPs in a row. They were all, when Red was big, they all showed up with this green blacklist that was really heavy on, it had main deck, Sylvan Advocate, and then 4 Catacomb Sifters. They're just kind of saying, hey, I really want that 3rd point of toughness at every turn.
Yep.
Like a Catacomb Sifter wouldn't have died there, sort of. Card's not really good in other matchups, but it's really good in this one.
Right. Speaking of good in this matchup.
Yeah, okay, good in this matchup. Here's something you can play out of the sideboard. It's our first look at Deathgorge Scavenger. Another card that dies to shock, sure, but boy, is this a good one. The 3/2 for 3, whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you can exile a card from a graveyard. If it's a creature card, you gain 2 life. If it's a non-creature card, Scavenger gets 1/1 until end of turn.
Kind of an homage to both Deathrite Shaman and Scavenging Ooze in the name.
Yeah.
Not nearly as good as either card, but similar effects to both.
I first, when I read this, thought that there was a 1/1 counter. I guess because I was still thinking Scavenging Ooze. It's just a 1/1 pump.
Yep.
But this is still a very good card.
Well, Scavenging Ooze is in the dinosaur. So,
Right,
you know,
so you have to pay extra for the dinosaur.
relevant creature type, that comes at a cost.
And an attack, he exerts on-crop Crasher, but Andrew's going to go ahead and Blossoming Defense his creature. Says, all right, you going to blow me out here? And I think Aryeh is. In response to Blossoming Defense, here's a Braid.
And Jessup can't just not make that play.
No, and you could tell by the motion that Andrew made the play knowing it wasn't going to work. But it's like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. So Ragavan jumps in, 3, 6, make it 8 damage total. Jessup down to 4.
Yeah, the odds of not taking lethal on the following turn, extremely low.
Yeah. I'll try. Here is another Deathgorge Scavenger. Oxile's Walking Ballista, Jessup up to 6. These are good plays.
He'll want a Fatal Push for that Karizev.
Another Abrade and a Spell Pierce from Jessup.
Sure.
Yeah. Maybe he lives another turn. All right, his last card might be Lightning Strike.
Bomat Courier, I think
go.
that's
a good
lethal.
Draw.
Oh, no,
Here's the
from
Bomat.
6 life it's not. Right, he gained 2.
Attack. Well,
Forces
here's
a block
Ragavan. Yeah,
anyway.
he can puts a card on a Courier. He can also pump the Bomat Courier.
Yeah.
It's an artifact. The best block Deathgorge Scavenger has is on Penal Iron. Or he says, I have a Lightning Strike too. And then, okay, that's good enough.
Yeah, pretty easy to get lethal with Lightning Strike.
Yeah, so Ramanap Red takes the second game. Despite the sideboard Deathgorge Scavenger and 2 of them, it showed some strength, right? Andrew had Ballista into Scavenger, and really not enough. It was, where I'm looking at this game is he wasn't ever able to establish a blocker, and he really could have used one.
First Ballista lined up pretty well.
Yeah, that one was good.
Gets Bomat Courier. The second Ballista, the turn after that maybe, that's where Jessup was really just not interacting favorably at all. He was using all of his mana and then just eating 1 card and taking a bunch of damage.
Right. So one thing I noticed Aryeh had boarded in these 2 PNLRs, I didn't see any Glorybringers or Chandra Torch of Defiance in the hand. Do you think they're still in?
Yeah, maybe. It's possible that his strategy is just to solidly be the beatdown and try to sneak in early damage.
Yeah, especially on the draw, I'm not sure how many of them we'll see. If they weren't there on the play, he's probably keeping as is.
I will say when I was playing a lot of Ramunap Red, if I could just be the beatdown, I would prefer that to having Glorybringer in my deck, just because there's a lot of games. For example, right there, Aryeh could never have cast Glorybringer. He never hit 5 mana. It just wasn't going to happen.
This is actually one of the matchups where Hazaret is kind of at its worst, and I know its worst is still pretty good.
Yeah.
Is it a matchup where Chandra Torch of Defiance or Hazaret, which is the better 4-mana card?
It's like super contextual. You're going to run into a lot of blockers, but even still, Hazaret, it's not dying to anything. You're forcing blocking.
Yeah.
If your opponent's going to have a creature left over, they can frequently just attack Chandra down, and that's worse than just maintaining Azaret.
Do you think that Hostage Taker being a card changes that math?
It's possible. Certainly also because Chandra can just answer Hostage Taker.
Yeah, Hostage Taker is good against Tezzeret, but bad against Chandra.
Yeah, there's certainly an argument for it.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm interested, I guess. It's whether or not that changes.
I think Hazaret's just so good. And
It's
the
so
ceiling's
good.
so high. You can't move entirely off it. There's a ton of there's 4 main deck copies, though. Trimming on it is certainly justifiable.
Yeah, I don't know if you could play 4 Hazaret and 4 Chandra, for example. That's a lot of.
That'd be tough.
It's a lot of mana worth of stuff.
You could end up with some pretty crummy openers if you have all those cards in your deck. In particular, this deck just really wants to curve out, so too many 4-drops can push you too far behind.
All right, well, the deciding match will put Sultai Energy on the play. Now, here on the SCG Tour, this year we debuted the Infinite Challenge, which is a way to play at starts of the open events without actually playing the main event. Say the main event is in a format that you don't have a deck for, or maybe you can only make it out to our opens one of the 2 days. So what this is it is a 2-day package for $80. You get to play all challenge events all weekend long. These are 4-round events with unique prizes that fire in each format every weekend. It's another way to get your playmat, the Star City Games exclusive playmat during the weekend, and you can see the whole side event schedule. You can show up with multiple decks, play multiple events, and as many as you can with the Infinite Challenge. You can find out our schedule to find an event near you. It's every open weekend at starcitygames.com/schedule.
Great playmats there. They're all masterpieces, really.
Invocations even.
See, Invocation doesn't really have any implication in the art world.
Yeah. They're really nice. I like that they made Spell Pierce and then printed Spell Pierce. The Spell Pierce was an invocation, and now it's standard legal
teaser.
again. Yeah.
Foreshadowing. Maybe Daze is next.
No, it's going to be Boil. Take that, blue-white approach. Boom. Boil.
Yeah, it's tough.
That's a fun card.
Tough to cast a 7-mana spell if your opponent is destroying multiple of your lands with 1 card.
On your end step. I always thought the card that was the biggest joke, we see turn 2 long to Cup from Andrew, was Boiling Seas. It's like, we're going to make this card that's designed to beat a mono blue deck, and it's going to be a 4-mana sorcery.
Yep. Perfect.
Like that's... What are you supposed to do with this card?
Well, I guess they had the counter. What are you gonna do?
Carry Zev from Aryeh. Right. What is this? What is this garbage?
Well, there's no instance in Portal.
Right.
So it has to be a sorcery.
Well, it was what, back when you had Standard, the core set would rotate. It was, I think, 9th edition where they announced that they were removing Boil from the core set and replacing it with Boiling Seas, and they just got so much flack over it. People were like, it's not a like, this doesn't do what you think it does. So Andrew here actually got an attack in with Long Tusk Cub. It was really nice. He plays turn 3 Rogue Refiner, gets 2 energy. That means Cub could be a 3/3. So no blocks from Aryeh. Cub hits for 2, and now Andrew has 4 energy.
And hanging out with the energy is pretty nice.
Yeah, I actually would have. I suspected, unless he has another use for the energy, you see a swing from Aryeh, and Exert from On-Crop Crasher. Andrew's other option was to make the Cub a 3/3 and then immediately make it a 4/4 on his own turn before Aryeh got to untap.
Yeah, being able to get ahead of the removal spells is
Right.
one thing, though depending on what the follow-up was on the other side of the table, this might have been a game where you want to draw extra cards with Glintstleaf Siphoner, for example.
Yeah. Or if you have Winding Constrictor in your hand and you're planning to just make a 6/6 Long Tusk Cub.
That's a little better.
Yep. He'll swing back for 9. Aryeh goes down to 9. Andrew gets 3 energy. All right, I see now.
Yeah, that's also pretty nice.
Had to play a tap land, and I actually want to point out in this green-black deck that really hurt Andrew. His hand had another Long Tusk Cub in it. That he had to play a tap land that turn. This is the kind of matchup where that really costs you.
Right. And with the Crasher not untapping because of Exert, Aryeh is kind of in a tough spot
Yeah,
here.
he's just losing the race.
Taking a lot of damage. There was some argument for not exerting. Frequently with Crasher, you attack and you don't exert, but you also don't want your opponent to block. It's like, no exerts, please don't block.
Yeah.
Because it's like, that's your only way to get enough damage to actually win the game.
But you have to block, right? If you attack with Crasher and don't exert, I'm almost forced into blocking.
It's very likely that Andrew blocks, and blocking, I believe, is the correct play.
Yeah.
But the only thing you can do is hope that they make a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're like, well, if you don't block, you're gonna lose. So
Yeah.
it's great.
I'm going to tell you, I've won a lot of games because my opponent didn't block when I didn't exert.
Sure. Here comes Karizev. Ragavan will bounce in off Winding Constrictor. Yeah, and I mean, Andrew actually can win this racing matchup, and that's the power of Winding Constrictor in this deck. See Pia Nolar from Aryeh leaving up single red. I guess he could finish off Constrictor with a shock if he has one.
Yeah. 2 blockers is not bad. Especially next turn, he'll be able to attack with the Crasher again. If he had something like
that's the scary part.
If he had a second Crasher, he could really make combat very hard for Jessup.
See Hostage Taker in Andrew's hand. It looks nice, but he draws Fatal Push. That's probably nicer, as long as he has another card to cast with it.
Something like Rogue Refiner Fatal Push would be excellent here.
Well, if you push away, say, the Thopter, Aryeh has to block with Pia, and you're just taking all his power off the table. I guess he's got to respect, counting out the ways he could take 11 damage. Andrew's hand has Long Tusk Cub, Fatal Push, Hostage Taker, and one other card.
And you're already forcing a block. There's a chance that you really just want to Fatal Push the Karizev just because you remove the most potential power from attacking you on the following turn.
So I mean, I'm not sure how good Hostage Taker is against Ramonep Red right now based on this game. I don't know that Andrew can... It feels slow, you know? Like, he can play it, but then if Aryeh has a kill spell, he's going to lose.
It's not a 4-mana card that wins the game on its own.
Right.
It's a 4-mana card that relies on you doing good things with your 1s, 2s, and your 3s.
Right.
When you find a spot for it, it's very powerful, but you can't just like put it in your deck and be like, all right, red matchup solved. I can exile Hazaret. You know, that's just not what the card does.
Yeah, I suspect it's going to be better against decks like the Aaron Barrich deck. You know, it's just, what's your deck? It's quality 2-drops. You know, you're like, well, I'll take one of those.
Yep.
And Andrew's going to make that aggressive line. He Fatal Pushes away the Pia, or the Thopter. Now swings. The Cub is a 6/6, meaning Aryeh has to block it. Can become an 8/8 off of that, the energy that Andrew has left over.
Yep. Yeah, really no two ways about that one.
Andrew's deciding if he wants to leave. He has to attack with 2 creatures. If he only attacks with the Cub, then Aryeh can actually take the damage. So he needs to put a second creature in there to force the issue. What he was not sure of is whether he wanted to leave a blocker back. And he decides no.
Yeah. Really just kind of a matter of the impact of the Crasher here. Also, there's a second Crasher.
Yep.
You can really get punished for leaving blockers back. You just have to apply pressure.
Aryeh takes 5, goes to 4. Jessup will cast Long Tusk Cub as a blocker. Now on-card Crasher's there, so that doesn't really do much unless he has Blossoming Defense. Aryeh.
It would be a really nice setup with Blossoming Defense, too, because he has the energy in reserve just to make it a 4/4 in case there was some kind of follow-up removal spell on the Cub.
Right. Ramonep Ruins is online this turn. But I don't think Aryeh's got to win this turn. I would be very surprised if he can survive another attack.
Yes. Yeah, there's just a ton of power on the other side of the battlefield.
So how can he make his way to 11? He's got the blocker answered, barring Blossoming Defense. So 6 damage on the attack, but he needs 5 more. That's a tall order.
You know, the fact that Lightning Strike's in the deck now, that makes it a little bit easier, but he does need some pretty specific cards here.
Yeah. Let's see where we start. And if he can't do it in 1 turn, he's going to have to try to spread out the win over 2 turns. Which I think with the Hostage Taker in Andrew's hand to remove a blocker, I don't think he can block through.
Right.
Here's Earthshaker Kenra. On Long Tusk Cub, is that going to work? Well, Andrew can just spend energy to stop that.
May as well.
Yeah. That's free. Attempts to make Cub a 4/4. So this is now 8 points of damage from Aryeh. If he has Lightning Strike in hand and attacks and Andrew has nothing, that should win. Aryeh saying hold on the counters.
Looks like they are going to come in.
Okay, and Blossoming, you see Andrew does have the Blossoming Defense. Yeah, the defense this turn and the Hostage Taker next turn.
Yeah, with that 4/4
Might have that
Cub,
bind, yeah.
Jessup just has 2 lethal creatures and then 2 more creatures that add up to lethal.
So just on Crop Crasher attacking, no blocks on Long Tusk Cub. And I like this, Andrew's just going to take 3 damage. Sure, he'll go to 8. Not even going to use a Blossoming Defense.
You got to figure that if that Cub activation worked, the Blossoming Defense is good if he wants to use it. You know, the question is, can he die from 8? Really tough to do. With the mana available, that's just not going to happen. It's 2 Lightning Strikes and a Shock. Or 4 Shocks. Or a Lightning Strike and 3 Shocks.
Okay, let's say he is going to actually Blossoming Defense in response to the trigger and then block. So stays at 11.
There's also the matter of, is the Blossoming Defense doing anything if he doesn't cast it there?
Yeah, he'd have to draw a 5th untapped land to have it do something. Aryeh will play a Bomat Courier as a blocker, but he's going to need many blockers. Both those Cubs are lethal. And Andrew's just going to take one of Aryeh's creatures hostage. So both Cubs are lethal. They both must be chump blocked, which means the Refiner and the Constrictor get through, deal 5. Barring a trick, this is game. And here comes team. Aryeh looks at it. Yeah, block the 2 biggest, still takes 5. Game and match go to Andrew Jessup.
And the Hostage Taker, again, that's the card that officially ended the game, though. The heavy lifting is the 2, 3, 1 mana spells.
Yeah, that was really impressive. It was interesting there. I expected this to be a tougher matchup for Andrew. It was some 3 close games, to be fair, between the 2. A lot of the times, I think the cards I liked out of, I guess it was just close. I didn't really care for any of the blue cards in that matchup. I saw Rogue Refiners dying to Shocks, and while I expected to like Hostage Taker in that matchup, I didn't like it as much once we got to the end of it.
And the matchups for those are really going to shine. I guess the Hostage Taker is going to be for the other mid-range decks, and the Rogue Refiner is a nicer tool against the control decks.
Yeah, I guess in the mirror, Hostage Taker should be great.
Yes, certainly. If you can take their Winding Constrictor.
That's so good.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah. Finally, you can cut that Gonti spot.
I would argue that Hostage Taker is a little bit better than Gonti.
All right, that's going to be our only match for this round, but we have 5 more rounds to go. So we're kind of reaching our midpoint. We're going to take a break, but then join us when we come back. We'll have round 5 of the Dallas Open.